The sky of Zephyra was a dull, sickly orange, streaked with black clouds that churned and hissed across the horizon. The twin suns hung low, weak and dim, unable to warm the barren landscapes below. Once a vibrant planet, rich with life and thriving civilizations, Zephyra now groaned under the weight of decay. Rivers that had flowed like molten silver now trickled as black sludge. Forests, once teeming with color, now stood as skeletal remains, their branches twisted and brittle. Every breath carried the sharp tang of acid rain and dying flora. Amidst this devastation, the Zephyrians, an alien species of tall, lean beings with translucent skin and elongated limbs, moved cautiously. Their eyes, large and reflective, constantly scanned their surroundings for danger. The harsh winds carried a chorus of eerie sounds. Creatures, once docile and peaceful, now mutated into feral predators, scavenging the dying lands. Survival had become a daily battle. In the heart of their capital, a city once gleaming with crystalline towers, the Zephyrians convened in their council chambers. The great hall, carved from the bones of ancient mountains, now seemed hollow, echoing the desperation of its occupants. High above, the vaulted ceiling shimmered faintly, a remnant of the energy shields that once protected the city from the harsh climate. Those shields had long since failed. The council consisted of the planet's most experienced minds, the leaders, scholars, and generals. They had gathered not to discuss politics, nor trade, but survival. Their society, known for centuries for its order and precision, was crumbling. Food shortages, unending storms, and disease had combined to form an unstoppable tide of despair. Even their technology, once capable of altering climates and controlling planetary ecosystems, now failed against the relentless deterioration. "This is unlike anything we have faced," said Kirill, the eldest of the council, his voice trembling yet controlled. His translucent skin flickered with faint bioluminescent patterns as he spoke, a sign of nervous energy. "Our attempts to stabilize the atmosphere have failed. The storms intensify. The crops are dying. The water is toxic. If we do not act, there will be no Zephyrians left." Around him, other council members murmured in agreement, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. Tensions ran high. Blame, frustration, and fear mingled in the air. Some whispered about abandoning the planet entirely, fleeing to distant star systems. Others argued that leaving would be surrendering to extinction without a fight. Mara, the youngest council member, clenched her slender hands. "We cannot leave," she said, her voice sharp. "Zephyra is our home. It has always been our home. If we abandon it now, everything we have built, our history, our knowledge, our people, will vanish. We must find help. We must reach out beyond the stars." The room fell silent. Her words hung in the heavy air, striking both hope and despair. Seeking help beyond the galaxy had been considered unthinkable. Zephyrians prided themselves on their independence and resilience. Sending a distress call to unknown civilizations was not a matter of convenience, it was a declaration of desperation. Yet desperation had a way of breaking pride. Kirill's eyes softened as he studied Mara. "And you believe anyone will answer?" he asked. "The universe is vast. Civilizations may not notice. Even if they do, will they care?" Mara shook her head, but her eyes burned with determination. "We have no choice. If we do not try, Zephyra dies. And soon. Every moment we wait, our world dies a little more." A heavy silence followed. The council debated for hours. They considered the risks. Alien civilizations might respond with hostility, misunderstanding, or indifference. Yet every argument against sending a call circled back to the same truth: they were running out of time. Finally, the decision was made. A message would be sent, a signal broadcast across the stars. It would carry Zephyra's SOS, a desperate plea for aid. The message itself had to be carefully crafted, a balance of clarity, urgency, and hope, without revealing weakness that could invite exploitation. In the labs below the council chamber, Zephyrian scientists worked feverishly. Streams of code and pulses of energy danced across their translucent work surfaces. They designed a beacon capable of piercing light years of darkness, encoding their location, their status, and their desperate need for help. It was a marvel of engineering, a testament to a civilization that had once held dominion over their planet's destiny. Yet as the beacon took shape, doubts lingered. Some scientists questioned if it would reach anyone at all. Others feared that, if it did, the response might be catastrophic. Stories of other civilizations responding to SOS calls were not always happy ones. In some cases, the help had come with strings attached: colonization, subjugation, or worse. One scientist, an elder named Velan, paused as he observed the beacon's final assembly. His glowing veins pulsed with unease. "What if we invite predators?" he whispered to no one in particular. "What if those who answer are not saviors, but hunters?" His warning, though chilling, did not stop the process. The beacon had to be sent. Zephyra's survival depended on it. When the council finally approved the final transmission, the atmosphere in the chamber was a mix of hope and fear. The beacon activated with a blinding surge of light, its energy rippling outward like a stone thrown into the cosmic sea. Across the planet, Zephyrians paused to witness the signal rising, a streak of glowing hope in the darkening sky. Outside the council halls, ordinary citizens, farmers, workers, children, looked up at the strange aurora caused by the transmission. Some prayed silently, others wept, and a few merely stared, frozen by the enormity of what had just begun. For generations, they had relied on themselves. Now, they were placing their fate in the hands of unknown forces across the stars. As the signal traveled through space, faster than any natural phenomenon could match, Zephyrians could only wait. Days passed like years. The storms on their planet raged without pause, tearing apart buildings and uprooting trees. Hunger gnawed at their bodies. Disease spread silently. The despair that had long been buried now clawed openly at every mind. Despite their suffering, there was a new undercurrent among the people, a fragile thread of hope. The act of reaching out had awakened something ancient within them, something they had almost forgotten: the belief that life, no matter how small or weak, could find a way to endure. Even as Zephyr decayed around them, the SOS represented a possibility, a spark in the endless void. But even hope carried fear. Who would answer? And when they did, would they bring salvation or destruction? In the quiet of the night, Kirill walked alone through the empty streets of the capital. His eyes reflected the dim glow of broken energy lamps. He had led Zephyr through many crises, but none like this. He paused near a collapsed tower, running his fingers along the cold surface. Memories of thriving markets, laughing children, and festivals long gone haunted him. "This is our last chance," he murmured, almost to himself. And yet, who knows if anyone will come? In the sky above, the faint pulse of the SOS signal moved outward, cutting through the darkness. Across the countless light-years of space, it would travel to places unknown, to civilizations alien and strange. Somewhere out there, something, or someone, would see it. And that would change everything. Below, on Zephyr, the people clung to what little remained of their hope. Children still played among the ruins, elders still told stories, and families still gathered for meager meals. Life persisted stubbornly, even as the planet itself seemed determined to die. The SOS was more than a signal. It was a promise. A promise that someone, somewhere, might answer. And for the first time in decades, the Zephyrians dared to imagine a future. Little did they know, the answer was already on its way. The emptiness of space stretched endlessly, dark and silent, a cold void where time seemed meaningless. Amidst this vast nothingness, the SOS signal from Zephyr pierced through the darkness, glowing like a lonely beacon calling for help. It had traveled light years, weaving through nebulae and past dead stars, searching for someone who would notice. And it did. On the edge of a star system far beyond Zephyr, a human fleet navigated the silent corridors of space. The ships moved with precision, their metallic surfaces gleaming under distant starlight. Pilots and commanders aboard the fleet were calm, trained, and utterly confident. To them, space was not a mystery but a challenge, a playground to test their skills and survival instincts. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the Sentinel. Her eyes scanned the incoming data streams, her mind processing every signal with sharp efficiency. When the SOS from Zephyra appeared on her display, she did not hesitate. There was no fear, no questioning of motives. Only a recognition of opportunity. Opportunity to extend humanity's reach, to survive, and to test their mettle against an unknown world. "Captain," said Lieutenant Harris, his voice steady but tinged with curiosity. "The signal comes from a dying planet. The species there. It's unlike any we've encountered." Elena did not flinch. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. We respond. No delays." In the hours that followed, the human ships adjusted their course. Faster than any alien technology could predict, they accelerated, riding the fabric of space with unmatched speed. The Zephyrians, watching from their crumbling observatories, could scarcely believe what they saw. What they had imagined as a distant hope, a faint light in the cosmic dark, was now a tangible force, approaching their world with unstoppable certainty. When the humans arrived, Zephyra's skies were painted with streaks of silver fire. The ships entered orbit with a grace and precision that seemed almost unnatural. The twin suns of Zephyra reflected off the human hulls, casting strange patterns on the dying land below. Citizens of Zephyra gathered wherever they could, shielding their eyes from the brilliance of the newcomers, whispering prayers that this was the help they had prayed for. Yet, the humans were not gentle saviors. There was no hesitation, no measured diplomacy in their approach. Their ships landed on the surface with the force of falling mountains, sending tremors through the cracked ground. Dust and debris erupted into the air, covering the landscape in a haze that made the Zephyrians gasp. To the aliens, the humans seemed almost reckless, their confidence bordering on arrogance. The first humans to step onto Zephyra were clad in reinforced suits, their faces obscured by visors reflecting the alien world in sharp detail. They moved swiftly, scanning, analyzing, and marking every point of interest. To the Zephyrians, these humans seemed fragile, soft-skinned creatures entirely out of place in such a harsh world. Yet they moved without fear, walking through acidic rain, jagged rocks, and toxic swamps as if the environment itself were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. High in the council towers, Kirill and Mara watched through observation lenses. Their eyes widened in astonishment, mixed with fear. They don't seem afraid," Mara whispered. "They walk through storms, through hazards we've taught our people to avoid for centuries." "How?" Kirill remained silent, his mind racing. He had prepared for the possibility that help might come, but not like this. These humans were not just responding, they were asserting themselves. And that assertion carried a kind of power the Zephyrians had never seen. The humans quickly deployed portable structures, their technology seamless and efficient. Machines whirred and hummed, purifying water, repairing damaged buildings, and stabilizing portions of the dying ecosystem. Within hours, areas of the capital began to show signs of revival. Rivers ran clearer, energy grids hummed back to life, and shelters that had long been abandoned were restored. To the aliens, it seemed miraculous, but it was not magic. It was human ingenuity applied with relentless determination. They did not negotiate slowly, nor did they request permission at every step. They assessed, acted, and adapted. Where Zephyrians had spent decades researching solutions, humans achieved the same in days. And all of it was done with a quiet, almost terrifying efficiency. As the humans moved further into Zephyra, the cultural shock became evident. Their approach to survival, their lack of fear in the face of danger, and their willingness to confront hazards head-on were completely alien to the Zephyrians. One human engineer waded through a toxic swamp, scanning the waters for contaminants, while a Zephyrian scientist screamed, warning of lethal consequences. The human simply nodded, ignored the protests, and continued his work, smiling faintly as if the danger itself were a test of skill rather than a threat. The Zephyrians could not help but watch in awe and fear. "They are not here to negotiate," whispered one elder. "They are not here to plead or bargain. They are predators of survival." The humans soon encountered resistance, not from the Zephyrians, but from the planet itself. Violent storms, collapsing terrain, and mutated predators tested every move. Yet the humans adapted. They built temporary shelters in minutes where Zephyrians had abandoned hope. They deployed drones to neutralize aggressive wildlife. They even cultivated new crops in poisoned soil using techniques the Zephyrians had thought impossible. One particular moment became etched into Zephyrian memory. A massive sandstorm had engulfed the northern plains, burying villages under layers of grit and debris. The Zephyrians feared for their people, expecting death and destruction. Yet the humans arrived in their ships, using energy shields and machinery to clear the debris at a speed that seemed impossible. They rescued survivors, stabilized the land, and left without a single casualty among the Zephyrians. It was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The aliens began to whisper among themselves. These humans, they do not follow the rules of life as we know them. They bend reality with their will and skill. Mara, standing atop a council tower, finally voiced what many had felt. They are not saviors. They are not heroes. They are something else. Something we cannot fully understand. Even as hope blossomed, unease grew. The Zephyrians had prayed for aid, but what had arrived was not aid in the gentle sense they had imagined. Humans were agents of change, unstoppable forces who reshaped the world around them according to their own understanding of survival. They did not ask for permission. They did not hesitate. And in their wake, Zephyra itself began to transform. Kirill realized that the humans' impact was not limited to technology or environment. Their mere presence altered the Zephyrians' perception of themselves. For centuries, they had believed themselves the masters of their world, capable of managing every crisis with intellect and strategy. Now, they were forced to confront a species that had mastered survival in a harsher universe than Zephyra could ever be. The humans interacted with the Zephyrians, teaching, instructing, and demonstrating techniques for managing the planet's failing systems. Yet every lesson carried a subtle warning: the Zephyrians were fragile. Their methods were slow, cautious, and fragile compared to human decisiveness. And that decisiveness was lethal when combined with knowledge and adaptability. In one extraordinary scene, humans walked through a region saturated with corrosive gases, planting stabilization devices in areas Zephyrians had long avoided. One human marine, unarmored and unafraid, waded through boiling mud to rescue a trapped alien child. The Zephyrians gasped. How could a being so seemingly delicate endure such hazards without harm? It became clear: these humans were born on worlds that demanded toughness, resilience, and relentless will. They had faced environments that would have killed most species, and they had survived. That survival instinct, combined with intellect and adaptability, made them unlike anything Zephyra had ever seen. The council convened again, this time not out of despair but to observe and learn. Kirill, Mara, and the others discussed what they had witnessed. "They are not here to help us as equals," Mara said quietly. "They are here to survive, and in the process, we are changed." And indeed, change swept across Zephyra. Within days, entire cities were restored. Crops flourished where once nothing grew. Water purification systems functioned. Disease rates fell. The people of Zephyra began to hope again, but that hope was intertwined with fear and respect. Humans had brought salvation, yes, but it was a salvation tempered by raw power, skill, and an unforgiving approach to life. Even the predators of Zephyra seemed to sense the shift. Mutated beasts retreated before the humans, as if instinctively aware that these creatures were unlike any they had encountered. The balance of life itself seemed to tilt under human influence, a subtle but undeniable reshaping of the planet's natural order. By the end of the first week, the Zephyrians had begun to realize the true magnitude of what they faced. The SOS had brought them help, but the help was not what they expected. Humans were not saviors in the gentle, protective sense they had envisioned. They were masters of survival, apex beings in a universe that demanded strength, adaptability, and courage. And for Zephyra, the arrival of humans was only the beginning. Their presence would not merely aid the planet, it would redefine it, and all who lived upon it, forever. The aliens had sent a call for help. What arrived was something far beyond their understanding, and far beyond their control. Zephyra had changed. The once dying planet now hummed with activity and light, thanks to the relentless work of the humans. Rivers flowed with clearer water, energy grids stabilized, and mutated creatures either fled or were neutralized. On the surface, the Zephyrians watched as their world transformed almost overnight. Yet, alongside the relief came an uncomfortable realization: power was no longer entirely theirs. The humans did not command with words or politics, they acted with precision. Where Zephyrians had hesitated, debated, or relied on tradition, humans simply implemented solutions. Their efficiency was unmatched. Machines whirred with exact timing, systems repaired themselves under the guidance of human engineers, and wild landscapes were tamed without ceremony. Zephyrians, who had once prided themselves on mastering their environment, now felt as though spectators in their own world. In the capital, Kirill observed a team of human marines navigating the storm-swept plains. These beings, clad in armor yet unflinching, moved through acid rain and jagged terrain as though it were a mere obstacle course. Even the alien predators, creatures that had terrorized the planet for decades, hesitated before the humans' presence. Kirill could hardly believe what he was seeing. "They do not fear the planet," he murmured to Mara. "They thrive in it." Mara's eyes were fixed on the humans' operations. "They are apex in ways we cannot understand. They bend the environment, the creatures, even the elements to their will." The Zephyrians were not wrong. Humans operated under a principle unfamiliar to most alien civilizations: survival above all else. They adapted rapidly, modified strategies on the fly, and showed an instinctual understanding of threats. A collapsing bridge over a toxic river was reinforced within minutes, using technology that Zephyrians had debated for weeks. Storm shelters were constructed before the first lightning strike hit, and regions thought to be impossible to reclaim were restored by sheer determination and ingenuity. But power is never without cost. Zephyrians began to notice subtle shifts in their society. Where humans worked, they left patterns of dominance. Leadership in decision-making naturally gravitated to humans, not out of arrogance, but because the results spoke for themselves. Decisions were executed without hesitation. Problems were solved before they could fully manifest. At first, the council tried to maintain authority. Kirill held meetings, issued orders, and attempted to coordinate efforts alongside the humans. Yet each directive from the Zephyrians was either streamlined or improved upon by human intervention. What once took councils weeks to deliberate was achieved in days, often in hours. The Zephyrians felt a growing sense of inadequacy, a quiet, gnawing fear that their methods were no longer sufficient. One evening, Mara walked through the restored northern plains, observing a human engineer repairing a collapsed energy conduit. She approached cautiously, noting how the human worked with precision and speed. "How do you do it?" she asked. The human looked up, a faint smile beneath the visor. "We survive. That's what we do. We don't wait for permission or debate endlessly. We act, and we adapt." Mara frowned. "But we debate because we must consider the consequences. Zephyra cannot be rushed, mistakes cost lives." The human tilted his head, eyes reflecting the alien sun. "Mistakes teach faster than caution ever will. We learn, we adapt, we survive. You've been holding back your own potential." His words struck her more than she expected. The humans were not merely solving problems, they were reshaping the Zephyrians' mindset. A subtle shift had begun. The aliens who had once prided themselves on caution and meticulous planning now questioned their own methods. This shift in power became more evident as humans interacted with the planet's ecosystems. Mutated predators that once terrorized villages were neutralized efficiently. Swamps that had been impossible to traverse were stabilized, allowing Zephyrians to reclaim farmland. Even the weather, long considered chaotic and uncontrollable, was partially managed through advanced human technology. To the Zephyrians, it seemed as though the humans were rewriting the rules of their world. The most dramatic moment occurred during a massive storm that had threatened the capital city. Winds reached speeds that tore roofs from buildings, lightning ignited fires across the plains, and rivers swelled beyond their banks. The council debated evacuation, yet every plan seemed insufficient against the ferocity of nature. The humans acted without hesitation. Drones were deployed to reinforce structures, energy shields were activated to protect critical zones, and teams of Marines moved through the storm to rescue trapped citizens. Where Zephyrians feared, humans thrived. They walked through the lightning, braving debris and floodwaters, guiding civilians to safety with unwavering calm. By the time the storm subsided, not a single Zephyrian life had been lost in areas managed by humans. The council watched in stunned silence. "They have become the force that controls this planet," whispered Kirill. "And we are merely observers." Mara's voice was quieter but sharper. "Control is not the right word. Influence. They have reshaped what we thought was impossible. They are unstoppable." Indeed, the humans' arrival had created a dual reality. On one side, Zephyra had been saved. The planet's ecosystems were stabilizing, cities were functional, and people were beginning to rebuild their lives. On the other side, the aliens themselves had begun to feel diminished. The humans' methods were efficient, direct, and ruthlessly effective. Where Zephyrians had taken decades to develop solutions, humans had accomplished the same in days. Where Zephyrians had debated endlessly, humans had acted decisively. A young Zephyrian scientist, observing a human engineering team, whispered to her colleague, "It is as if they are born to survive. We were born to manage. And now, management seems so small, so inadequate." The humans' impact extended beyond survival and technology. They reshaped the culture itself. Where once the Zephyrians had valued caution and deliberation, there was now an emerging respect for decisiveness, adaptability, and action. Some aliens began training with human teams, learning techniques for construction, combat, and environmental restoration. Others observed, taking notes and mimicking strategies they had once considered reckless. The very ethos of Zephyrian society was evolving under the influence of these strangers. Yet fear and tension lingered. The humans did not seek approval. They did not follow the council's hierarchy. Decisions were made on merit and outcome, not rank or tradition. Some Zephyrians struggled with this, resisting the changes and fearing that their autonomy was slipping away. Others embraced it, recognizing that survival demanded adaptation, even if it meant ceding some authority to the newcomers. One council session exemplified the shift. Kirill proposed a cautious approach to repairing a large energy grid in the southern sector. The human lead, Commander Darius, overruled him calmly. "We can stabilize it in half the time with no casualties. Our plan works. Trust it." Kirill hesitated, then reluctantly nodded. Within hours, the southern sector was fully operational. The council realized collectively that human methods were not merely efficient, they were transformative. The Zephyrians began to understand a profound truth: the humans were not merely allies. They were apex survivors, beings whose skills and instincts transcended conventional understanding. They had arrived not to save Zephyra in a gentle sense, but to impose their version of survival, efficient, adaptive, and absolute. It was a lesson in humility. The Zephyrians had once considered themselves masters of their world, capable of managing life and nature with intellect and strategy. Now, they were forced to acknowledge that mastery required more than intellect. It required adaptability, resilience, and courage beyond what they had known. As days turned into weeks, the humans continued their work. They repaired infrastructure, stabilized ecosystems, trained Zephyrians in survival techniques, and neutralized threats. And with every success, the balance of power shifted subtly but irreversibly. Zephyrians grew stronger, wiser, and more capable, but always under the shadow of human efficiency and relentless determination. Kirill observed the transformation with mixed feelings. Relief for the planet's survival, pride in his people's growth, and awe at the humans' capabilities, all intertwined with a nagging fear. The Zephyrians had called for help, and help had arrived, but it was a force beyond comprehension, one that could not be contained, predicted, or controlled. The humans had changed Zephyra. They had altered not just the land, the water, and the cities, but the very way its inhabitants thought, acted, and survived. And in doing so, they had shifted the true power of the planet. It was no longer the Zephyrians alone who held the fate of their world. It was a shared power, tempered by the human skill, resolve, and unparalleled survival instincts. And that shared power carried an unspoken truth. In the universe, survival was not given, it was claimed. And humans had come to claim it, here, on Zephyr, for themselves and, inadvertently, for the aliens who would follow their lead. By the end of the first month, the Zephyrians had begun to accept a new reality. Their world was alive again, vibrant and thriving, but the terms of that revival had been set by humans. The lessons of survival, adaptability, and action had been written in bold, unyielding lines. And in the quiet moments, when Kirill and Mara looked upon the restored landscapes, they understood the most profound lesson of all. Power was not simply the ability to command, it was the ability to act decisively when every second counted. The Zephyrians had sent an SOS in desperation. The humans had arrived, and with their arrival came transformation. A shift in power had occurred, not through conquest or domination, but through the undeniable truth of survival. And for Zephyr, the consequences of that shift would echo for generations. For some, hope and fear walked side by side. For others, awe mingled with unease. But all understood one thing clearly. The galaxy had introduced Zephyr to something extraordinary. Something unstoppable. Something that would forever redefine life on their world. The shift in power was complete. The sun rose weakly over Zephyr, casting long shadows across the scarred landscape. Human machines hummed and whirred as they continued to restore what nature had stripped away, while Zephyrians moved cautiously among them, studying their every action. Life was returning, but so was tension. Recovery came at a price. The Zephyrians had to confront the stark differences between their methods and those of the humans. From the first moment, cultural clash became inevitable. Humans acted on instinct and experience. They measured risk differently, valued efficiency over tradition, and had little patience for deliberation. Zephyrians, by contrast, prized careful planning, balance, and respect for hierarchy. Where humans bulldozed forward, aliens hesitated. Where aliens sought consensus, humans acted alone. In the capital's main plaza, a group of Zephyrians gathered, observing a human team dismantling an old energy node. The humans worked quickly, improvising repairs using unfamiliar techniques. Sparks flew, cables were rerouted, and soon the node hummed with energy, functioning better than it had in decades. One elder, Goral, shook his head. "They destroy what they touch," he said. "They have no respect for our ways." A young Zephyrian, Lyra, countered, "They save what we cannot. Our methods are slow. We debate for months while the planet dies. They act, and the result is life." Goral's eyes narrowed. "Acting without understanding is dangerous. We have traditions for a reason. Our culture is built on centuries of knowledge. They disregard it all." The humans, for their part, noticed the hesitation. They were aware of alien expectations but did not bend to them. Commander Darius, observing a debate among the Zephyrians, spoke to his team in quiet tones. "Let them worry about traditions. We have a planet to stabilize. If they want to follow, fine. If not, their survival depends on learning from us." This approach created friction. Zephyrians bristled at what they perceived as arrogance. They were grateful for the humans' aid but uncomfortable with the speed, decisiveness, and sometimes harsh methods. Yet the humans were not cruel. They were pragmatic. Mistakes were corrected swiftly. Inefficiency was replaced with effectiveness. For the Zephyrians, it was both astonishing and unsettling. Tensions escalated when the first joint mission was planned. Humans and Zephyrians were to repair a failing water purification system on the edge of the northern swamps, a region known for its volatile weather and aggressive mutated wildlife. The Zephyrians arrived first, setting up monitoring stations, calculating risks, and planning contingencies. Hours passed, and the humans finally appeared, striding into the swamps with minimal preparation. Protective gear was simple, their machines deployed instantly. Where Zephyrians had established a dozen safety protocols, humans assessed hazards as they moved. Mara, observing from a ridge, whispered to Kirill, they move like predators. Calm, precise, deadly to hesitation. Kirill frowned. Yes, but notice how quickly they solve problems. Even here, in this chaotic swamp, they adapt faster than our planning allows. That is power. The mission began in earnest. A sudden surge of acidic water threatened to flood the purification plant. The Zephyrians hesitated, debating whether to shut down the system or reroute the flow. Humans acted immediately. Using portable barriers and energy shields, they controlled the flood while simultaneously repairing damaged components. In less than an hour, the system stabilized. The Zephyrians watched, awestruck. Their protocols, based on centuries of experience, had been bypassed, yet the outcome was flawless. It was the first clear lesson in adaptability. Humans did not rely solely on rules, they relied on action, experience, and constant adjustment. Despite the friction, progress forced cooperation. Humans taught Zephyrians practical skills, rapid construction methods, survival techniques, and emergency management. Zephyrians, in turn, shared knowledge about the planet's unique hazards, toxic flora, and native predators. Slowly, a new form of alliance emerged, one based on mutual respect, tempered by differences in approach. Yet cultural gaps remained. Humans were direct, Zephyrians valued subtlety. A human engineer would speak plainly, "Do this now, or it will fail." A Zephyrian advisor might respond, "Perhaps we should consider alternatives first." Misunderstandings were common, but over time, both sides learned to adapt. Humans became more patient with explanations, and Zephyrians learned to trust action over endless deliberation. A defining moment occurred during a sudden predator attack in the eastern forests. Mutated beasts, driven by hunger and territorial instinct, emerged from the shadows, attacking both humans and aliens. Zephyrians froze, unsure of how to respond. Humans, however, moved with lethal precision. Energy weapons discharged, traps were set, and the predators were subdued within minutes. After the chaos, a young Zephyrian named Thalen approached Commander Darius. "Your methods, they are ruthless." Darius looked at him calmly. "Ruthless? Maybe. But necessary. If we hesitate, we die. If we act, we survive. That is the law of every world we've known." Thalen hesitated, then nodded. The lesson was clear. Survival sometimes demanded hard choices. The Zephyrians began to internalize the idea that effectiveness, even when harsh, could save lives. Over the following weeks, human-led teams worked across the planet. Cities were restored, energy grids repaired, and agricultural zones revived. The Zephyrians observed and gradually participated, learning the humans' methods and applying them under guidance. Trust grew, though it was never blind. Both species recognized that cooperation required balance, respect for strengths, acknowledgement of weaknesses. The first truly joint project was monumental, the rehabilitation of a massive swamp region that supplied water to half the planet. Humans engineered rapid drainage, filtration, and ecosystem stabilization. Zephyrians provided knowledge of the swamp's currents, flora, and native wildlife. The collaboration worked because humans adapted, and Zephyrians trusted. During the operation, a powerful storm struck. Lightning cracked overhead, waters surged, and toxic gases hissed through the air. Panic threatened the Zephyrians, but humans remained steady. They directed operations calmly, their actions precise. They saved dozens of Zephyrian workers from near-certain death, earning respect and admiration. In the aftermath, Mara addressed the council. "We have seen the humans in action. They are unlike anything we imagined. Yet, in their ways, there is wisdom. We must learn, adapt, and cooperate, or risk losing the chance they have given us." Kirill agreed, though his voice carried caution. "Yes, but we must not lose ourselves. Their methods are effective, but we must maintain our identity. Partnership, not domination, must guide us." Despite careful guidance, cultural tension persisted. Zephyrians were uncomfortable with humans' willingness to act decisively, often without seeking permission. Humans struggled with the Zephyrians' tendency to debate endlessly, sometimes risking inaction. Misunderstandings occurred, but they were mitigated by shared experience and the tangible results of cooperation. One night, Mara walked among human engineers repairing flood barriers. She asked quietly, "Do you ever hesitate?" A human replied, wiping sweat from his brow, "We do not have time for hesitation. Hesitation kills. Action saves. That is our law." The simplicity of the answer struck her. Humans had distilled survival to its core: act decisively, adapt constantly, and accept responsibility for outcomes. It was a lesson Zephyrians would carry long after the humans departed. By the end of the first month of full cooperation, a fragile but growing alliance had formed. Zephyrians had begun adopting human practices in emergency response, agriculture, and construction. Humans had learned about local hazards and integrated Zephyrian knowledge into their operations. Mutual respect emerged from necessity. Survival demanded collaboration, and collaboration required trust. Even the citizens began to change. Children watched human marines train with Zephyrian youths, learning to navigate dangerous terrain and improvise solutions to problems. Farmers applied human agricultural methods to Zephyrian soil, increasing yield dramatically. Scholars debated human engineering principles, realizing that centuries of tradition could sometimes be accelerated with practical action. And yet, both sides recognized the delicate balance. Humans were not conquerors, they respected the Zephyrians' autonomy. Zephyrians were not passive observers, they actively learned and contributed. The alliance was built on the shared goal of survival, tempered by cultural differences that made each step forward a careful negotiation. The first true test of this alliance came when a massive sinkhole threatened the southern city. Both species had to act simultaneously. Humans deployed heavy machinery, while Zephyrians provided knowledge of the subterranean currents. Coordination was tense. Any mistake could be fatal. But together, they stabilized the land, saving thousands of lives. The success cemented the understanding that cooperation, though challenging, was essential. By the second month, Zephyrians had started to embrace the humans' principles more openly. They practiced rapid decision-making, improvisation, and adaptive strategies. Humans, in turn, learned patience and respect for tradition. A symbiotic relationship was forming, one born of necessity, strengthened by shared experience, and balanced by cultural respect. The cultural clash had become a dynamic alliance. The Zephyrians had sent an SOS in desperation. The humans had arrived not merely to help, but to transform. And through conflict, misunderstanding, and adaptation, a new path emerged. A partnership that combined the strengths of both species, ensuring survival in a universe that demanded strength, flexibility, and courage. The lesson was clear: survival was not only about strength, intelligence, or technology, it was about collaboration, respect, and learning from those whose methods differed. And in that lesson, Zephyra had found not just salvation, but evolution. For the first time in decades, the planet breathed with renewed life, and its people walked forward with cautious hope, guided by allies who were as formidable as they were extraordinary. Zephyra was no longer the same world that had sent the desperate SOS into the endless void of space. The scars of centuries of decay were still visible: cracked earth, ruined forests, and remnants of cities long abandoned, but life was returning in ways the Zephyrians could barely have imagined. And at the center of this resurgence stood the humans, relentless in their work, reshaping the planet and its inhabitants in subtle and profound ways. From the highest council tower, Kirill observed the bustling streets below. He watched Zephyrians and humans moving side by side, building, repairing, and exploring the world anew. Once timid children now ran freely through restored parks, their laughter echoing across the city. Farmers tended fields once considered barren, their work guided by the techniques humans had introduced. Even the rivers, long poisoned and sluggish, now shimmered with clear water, carrying life back to the far reaches of Zephyra. Mara walked beside a group of human engineers inspecting a hydroponic farm. "They have done more in months than we could in decades," she murmured. "And yet, I feel something else has changed. Not just the land, but us." Kirill nodded slowly. "Yes. Their influence is not only in technology or efficiency. It is in our perception of ourselves, our courage, our willingness to act. We have learned to survive differently. Indeed, the transformation was evident in every aspect of Zephyrian life. Where caution once ruled every decision, adaptability now held sway. Citizens took initiative, applied new techniques, and approached problems with a pragmatic mindset they had never possessed before. Life had regained momentum, fueled by a combination of Zephyrian knowledge and human instinct. The humans themselves showed no signs of slowing. Their work was methodical, precise, and guided by experience. They repaired the most dangerous regions first, stabilized the planet's failing energy grids, and neutralized the mutated predators that had terrorized the population for decades. Yet they also understood the need for patience. They allowed the Zephyrians to participate fully, learning from them, contributing their own skills, and gradually adopting a shared vision of survival and progress. One striking example occurred in the northern wastelands, where a massive chasm threatened to swallow entire settlements. Humans deployed advanced engineering machines, constructing supports and barriers at astonishing speed. Zephyrians contributed knowledge of subterranean currents and rock formations. Together, the two species stabilized the region, preventing disaster. Yet the process was more than technical, it was symbolic. The collaboration demonstrated the potential of shared strength, blending human decisiveness with Zephyrian wisdom. Even the predators of Zephyra began to retreat before this combined force. Mutated creatures that had once been the scourge of the land now avoided areas patrolled by humans and trained Zephyrians. The balance of life itself shifted under the influence of the alliance. Where death and danger had once ruled, survival and order now prevailed. Amid this resurgence, the Zephyrians themselves underwent a profound internal transformation. They had always been capable, intelligent, and resilient, but the human's presence revealed hidden depths of courage and adaptability. Citizens once paralyzed by fear now acted decisively, applying techniques learned from humans to everyday life. Communities reorganized, initiatives were undertaken, and a new sense of agency spread across the planet. Mara often walked among the people, observing the changes. She saw children learning human methods for emergency response, families restoring homes together with combined strategies, and scholars studying human engineering and strategy to improve Zephyrian practices. "We are not just surviving," she said quietly to Kirill. "We are evolving." Kirill nodded. "Yes. But we must remember, we are evolving not alone, but with them. Humans have shown us a path. It is up to us to walk it carefully, without losing who we are." That path was not without challenges. The humans' influence was pervasive, and not all Zephyrians welcomed it. Some elders resisted the methods and philosophies introduced by humans, fearing the loss of tradition and identity. Others questioned the long-term consequences of relying on beings so powerful and different. Yet the results were undeniable. Survival, prosperity, and growth had returned to Zephyra in a way that mere debate or hesitation could never have achieved. The first generations to fully experience this new era were children who grew up observing humans as guides and mentors. They learned survival skills, emergency protocols, and innovative techniques for engineering and agriculture. They internalized the idea that action, adaptability, and courage were as valuable as knowledge and strategy. These children would become the leaders of Zephyra, carrying forward lessons that could redefine the future of the species. In the council chambers, discussions had shifted from desperation to planning. No longer were debates solely about survival. They now included ideas for expansion, research, and cooperation with humans in broader galactic matters. Zephyrians had learned to balance caution with action, deliberation with decisiveness. And as they did so, the humans watched, offering guidance without dictating, supporting without dominating. One particularly significant event occurred when a Zephyrian research team proposed a planetary-wide monitoring system to prevent future ecological disasters. Humans immediately assisted, bringing advanced sensor technology and rapid deployment strategies. Within weeks, the system was operational, providing real-time data on weather patterns, toxic zones, and geological shifts. Zephyrians could now anticipate dangers that once struck without warning. The planet had become safer, not because it had changed naturally, but because life on it had learned to act differently. Faster, smarter, stronger. As the months passed, a sense of legacy began to form. The Zephyrians recognized that the humans' arrival had permanently altered their world. Not only had their environment been saved, but their mindset, society, and approach to life had been transformed. They were no longer passive inhabitants of a failing planet. They were active participants in shaping their destiny. Even the humans acknowledged the significance of their work. Commander Darius addressed his team quietly one evening, observing the bustling streets. "We came to help them survive," he said. "But in the process, they've shown us resilience in ways we didn't expect. We're not only changing a planet, we're witnessing the evolution of a species." The Zephyrians, too, began to understand the broader implications. Their once narrow perspective had expanded. They could imagine life beyond Zephyr, cooperation with other species, and the possibilities that arose when survival demanded adaptability and courage. Humans had not only saved their world, they had illuminated a future previously unimaginable. In private moments, Kirill reflected on the journey. He remembered the desperation that had led them to send the SOS, the fear and uncertainty that had gripped their people, and the moment humans arrived. The planet had survived, yes. But the true miracle lay in the transformation of its inhabitants. They had been forced to evolve, to reconsider their limitations, and to embrace a new understanding of power, survival, and cooperation. The legacy was clear: Zephyr would never be the same. Children born during this era would inherit a world where survival demanded courage and adaptability, where technology and tradition could coexist, and where cooperation with other species was not just a choice but a necessity. The humans had catalyzed this change, but the Zephyrians had embraced it, internalizing lessons that would echo for generations. Even as the human fleet prepared to depart, their presence remained embedded in the world. Cities retained the structural improvements, ecosystems maintained their balance, and people carried the knowledge and skills gained from months of rigorous collaboration. The planet's heartbeat had been restored, steady and resilient, thanks to the combined efforts of humans and Zephyrians. And yet, a quiet understanding lingered. The humans were not simply saviors. They were apex survivors, beings whose skills, instincts, and adaptability had forever altered the balance of life on Zephyr. The Zephyrians had learned from them, adapted, and grown stronger, but the memory of their arrival, their decisiveness, and their influence would remain as a reminder that survival required action, courage, and the willingness to embrace change. The first sunset after the humans' departure was unlike any Zephyrian had seen. The skies glowed with hues of orange, violet, and silver, reflecting off restored rivers and renewed forests. Citizens gathered to watch, whispering among themselves about the changes that had swept across their world. Some spoke of hope, others of awe, and a few of cautious respect. But all understood that their lives, their society, and their planet had been fundamentally transformed. Mara stood atop a cliff overlooking the northern plains, wind brushing against her face. She thought of the desperation that had led to the SOS, the terrifying power of the humans, and the lessons learned. "We survived," she murmured, "but we have also evolved. And we will carry this legacy forward." Kirill joined her silently, his gaze on the horizon. "The universe has shown us something important. Survival is not given. It is claimed. And in claiming it, we discover who we truly are." The planet's heartbeat continued, stronger than ever. The Zephyrians, once desperate and on the brink of extinction, now moved forward with renewed purpose. Humans had left their mark, but the true transformation belonged to Zephyr's inhabitants. They had learned to survive, to adapt, and to act with courage. The legacy of the SOS, and of the humans who answered it, would endure forever. The galaxy had changed Zephyr. And in that change, the Zephyrians found not only survival, but evolution, hope, and the knowledge that even in the darkest times, life could find a way to endure and thrive.